Hi, I'm Dusty with Magnum Electric Bikes, and today I'm going to show you how to build our latest fat tire 750 watt mountain bike, the Edge. When your bike comes, it may be strapped and it's definitely going to be stapled, so the first thing we're going to want to do is remove it from the box and take off all the packaging. You may need a friend, but I can show you a trick on how to cut open the box as well. It helps to have a pair of snips, flush cutters, dikes, any kind of cutting tool. The box has some pretty aggressive staples, so be careful of those. I've gotten nabbed by those a few times. The bike is actually protected by foam on each end, so the way I like to open up the box is actually by cutting the edges. Next, I'm going to clip all the zip ties holding the parts of the bike together with a pair of flush cutters or dikes, being careful not to nick your paint job or your tires. Now we're going to remove the bike from the box, clear our workspace, and remove all the packing material. The tools required for the edges assembly are going to be a 15mm combination wrench, a 10mm combination wrench, and then a 6, a 5, and a 4mm Allen wrench or hexagonal wrench, and a regular Phillips screwdriver. To check the tightness of your rotor on the wheel, your disc rotor, you may also want a T25 or Torx 25. To begin, I'm going to take my 4mm Allen wrench and loosen the faceplate bolts of the stem. I just have the bike standing up on the ground with the fork, just as you would without a professional bike stand. That's how most people would build it. I'm going to install the handlebar while it's on the floor. Then we'll lift the bike up and put the front wheel on, and then you can kickstand it on the floor, which is really convenient. So first things first, I'm just going to loosen all these faceplate bolts. Next, I'm going to take notice that my handlebar is not all twisted up. It can get a little wonky and chipping. I'm just going to hold the handlebar against the stem and only install 2 of the faceplate bolts diagonally from each other. And I start these by hand just to make sure they aren't cross-threaded. There's 1 and 2. And then my handlebar should be held in place. I'm just going to loosely drive these home just to keep the handlebar steady. We're not tightening yet. And then I'm going to install the other 2 diagonal faceplate bolts. I like to wait until I get the wheel on to adjust the handlebar rotation and where it is, because the angle is going to change once we get the front wheel on. So I would just do these very loosely hand tight for now, just to hold my handlebar in place. Next, we're going to install the front wheel using a 6mm Allen wrench. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can lift the bike up and try to install the wheel. Although on this fat bike, and because of the cool integrated stem display, or integrated top tube display on this bike, I think it's easiest to flip it over. So that's what I'm going to do. You can use the right rear brake to stop the wheel if you need. Then I'm just going to gently rotate this bike over and place it on the ground, which will make it easier to install the front wheel. The axle on the fork is reverse threaded and does have a nut here on the end that you may want to hold. So righty is actually loose and left is tight. And we're also going to make sure and remove the spacer that's inside your brake caliper. That's just for shipping. And then we'll install our front wheel with the disc rotor on the same side as the disc caliper. Sliding that down, make sure the rotor's in the middle of the pads. And then making sure to hold this nut inside the fork. I'm just going to slide my axle through and thread gently, lefty-tighty. Once you have that axle threaded, it's tightened 10 to 15 Newton meters, which is not crazy tight, just moderately tight. Now that our front wheel is on, I'm going to flip the bike back over and put the kickstand down. Next step, we're going to install the headlight and the pedals, and then we'll tighten our handlebar. The headlight is inside your accessory box here. and is mounted to the fork with the 5mm Allen wrench and the 10mm combination wrench. The brake arch of the fork here has the bolt through it, and we're going to put the bracket for the headlight on the back side and put the Allen wrench side head of the bolt through the front. And I always start this by hand to make sure it's not cross-threaded. And we'll tighten it with the Allen wrench and the combination wrench. Once that headlight is tight and doesn't move, you can plug in your headlight connection, which is keyed. It has a ridge that fits only one way inside the connector. And headlight's plugged in. Next, we're going to install our pedals using the 15mm combination wrench. The pedals do have a right and a left, and the right and left is from the rider's perspective. So if you're riding the bike, the right's going to go on the right and the left's going to go on the left. And at this point, you would want to grease the threads of the pedals a little bit, and if you don't have bike-specific grease, you can use petroleum jelly even if you want. Any kind of light lubricant is a good idea. I'm going to start threading the pedal by hand. Righty-tighty from your perspective, and the other side is opposite threads. It's important to start them by hand, and I'll even tighten them almost all the way by hand so that we don't cross-thread our crank, and then give it a good tightening with the 15mm wrench. You want your pedals nice and tight. At this point, I'm going to install the AirTag compatible bell. This bell, you can put an AirTag from Apple or like an Android M tag underneath the bell housing so that if a thief takes your bike, you'll be able to track it. The bell screws off and you can throw an M tag or AirTag right in there. And then this just mounts to the handlebar with a Phillips screwdriver. The throttle on the Edge is mounted on the right. So I think since my thumb will be busy hitting the gas, I'm going to put this bell on the left. Nice. And I'm taking note of this little crosshairs here and making sure that it is at least in the middle of the stem from left to right. That was a little off. Once you find where you like that, get your 4mm Allen wrench, and we're going to tighten each bolt a moderate amount, and then go diagonally to the adjacent bolt. Until we have about 10 Newton-meters of tightness, which again is moderately tight. It somewhat depends on the size of your Allen wrenches. These ones are kind of short, so I'm going pretty tight with this small wrench. At this step, you may want to assess also whether or not your throttle is tight. You don't want your throttle loose like that when you go to press on it. Same thing with your up and down arrows and your controls for your display. These are tightened with a small Allen wrench on the bottom here as well. And at this step, I may also plug in my throttle, which is the yellow connector. It is also keyed, so it has a groove that fits into the female end, and it only goes in one way. Never force your electrical connections. You don't want to bend a pin, because then you'll have to get a new component. At this stage, it's a good idea to power on your bike and make sure it works. The power button for the bike is located along the lower edge of the up and down arrow controls here on the left. You press and hold that lower edge power button to power on the display. Next, I'll show you how to remove your battery and how to charge it. That's going to be on the other side of the bike. You can see the charging port for the battery here. You can charge the battery on or off the bike. But when riding the bike, make sure that this charging port is put back in place to keep water and debris out of the battery's charging connection. To remove your battery, you'd insert the keys here and turn counterclockwise. And you'll see when you do that the battery pops out just a little bit. Then there's a spring-loaded lever to release it the rest of the way. And you can pull the battery out, see the level of charge, and it has a nice little carrying handle as well. You'll definitely want to store the battery inside the house if it's hot or really cold. And it's also a lot easier to put it on a bike rack without the 8 or 9 pound battery. To reinstall the battery, we're just going to put it in bottom first. So the pins are engaging first with the bike, and then pop it into place and remove your key. Your Edge comes with a 48 volt charger, which actually charges the battery to about 54 volts. Plugs into any regular house outlet. And when you plug it into the wall, this light will turn green. And when it's charging a battery, it will turn red. Once it's charged your battery and the light turns green, your battery is full and ready to go. The reflector that comes with the bike will fit quite nicely on the seat post so that you can be visible from the rear. And tightens the rest of the way with a screwdriver. There is a rear rack and rear light system that's available for the Edge that plugs straight into the battery. The rear rack would mount to these 4 bolts here, and the rear light would mount to the rear of the rack. There's also a fender set that's available for the Edge. The rear fender would mount here and here, with stays that also mount down here. And the front fender would mount to the back of the fork here alongside your light, with stays that mount to this lower bolt. At this point, it's a good idea to check the tire pressure on your Edge. Fat tires do take a lower pressure, and you can see the recommended PSI on the sidewall of the tire. 5 to 15 PSI is the recommended pressure on this tire, and I can tell by pinching it that it's good to go. It's always a good idea to check with an air gauge or with a pump that has an air gauge on it. If you have any questions in assembly, or if anything's missing from your accessories or parts, you can always give our customer support a call at 323-375-2666. They're based in Salt Lake City, Utah, so they are on Mountain Time. But they answer the phone with a real human, which is kind of rare these days. You can also email us at info@magnumbikes.com, and there you can also find assembly instructions and a really nice owner's manual that explains the display in great detail.